In this video, we're going to talk about how Native Americans survived in some of the harshest, coldest environments on Earth. Places where temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees, where endless plains stretched without a single tree for firewood, and where blizzards could rage for days without mercy. What they achieved goes far beyond mere survival. They thrived, using ingenious technologies and systems that modern science is only now beginning to fully appreciate. These weren't primitive people struggling against nature. They were master engineers who turned physics, thermodynamics, and the very elements that threatened them into allies. By the end of this video, you'll realize that everything you thought you knew about fighting extreme cold was just scratching the surface. The philosophy: conservation over production. Before diving into their specific techniques, we need to understand a fundamental principle that guided everything Native Americans did in winter. Modern society's approach to cold is simple: generate more heat. Crank up the furnace, burn more fuel, produce more warmth. But Native Americans operated on an entirely different philosophy, one that was arguably far more sophisticated. Their genius wasn't in generating heat, but in trapping and preserving it. They intuitively grasped a key principle of thermodynamics that took scientists centuries to formalize. Still air is nature's best insulator. Every technique they developed, from clothing to shelter to fuel management, revolved around creating and maintaining pockets of motionless air. It was natural nanotechnology working on a macro level, and it was devastatingly effective. The fuel crisis: burning what others ignored. On the Great Plains, the challenge was stark and unforgiving. No forests meant no firewood, just endless grasslands, howling winds, and temperatures that could kill an unprepared person in hours. So they turned to what seemed like the least likely fuel source imaginable: buffalo dung. This wasn't desperation, it was brilliance. Dried buffalo chips, as they called them, were actually superior to wood in many ways. Composed mainly of digested grass, these dense fibrous masses burned slowly and steadily, producing remarkable heat with almost no smoke. This smokeless quality was crucial. Thick smoke inside a confined shelter would be unbearable, and from a distance, minimal smoke meant their camps remained nearly invisible, an advantage for both hunting and defense. The smell wasn't unpleasant either. Witnesses described it as earthy, like dried grass or peat, a comforting aroma that became synonymous with warmth and home for plains peoples. More importantly, the efficiency was extraordinary. A small pile of chips could maintain a fire for several hours, and the vast buffalo herds, numbering in the millions, left behind an essentially unlimited supply. Collecting and preparing this fuel was serious business. Families gathered chips every autumn, stacking them high beside their tepees in preparation for winter. They mixed the dung with dried grass to help catch the initial spark, and sometimes added bone grease or melted fat to create longer-lasting embers. It wasn't just fuel, it was a carefully managed system of energy storage. Even the ashes found new purposes: spread over ice for traction or mixed with hides to speed meat drying. Nothing was wasted. Every element had multiple uses in their survival equation. The teepee, a masterpiece of thermal engineering. At first glance, a plains teepee looks almost ridiculously simple, just poles and animal hides shaped into a cone. But this elegant structure represents centuries of refined engineering, perfectly adapted to extreme conditions in ways that modern architects are only now fully appreciating. The conical shape wasn't arbitrary. It made the dwelling incredibly wind-resistant. Even hurricane-force winds would flow around it rather than against it. The slightly backward-leaning cone enhanced this effect, pressing the structure firmly to the ground. The frame consisted of 15 to 20 long pine poles arranged in a specific order that created remarkable stability, capable of bearing heavy snow loads without collapsing. But the real genius was hidden inside. An inner lining of thinner hides was attached to the poles, suspended about half a meter above the ground. This created an air gap between the outer wall and living space, essentially a primitive but highly effective thermos. Cold air entering under the outer edge didn't rush in as an icy draft. Instead, it rose smoothly through this gap, mixing with warm air from the fire and creating constant, adjustable circulation. The fire pit itself sat slightly off-center toward the entrance, allowing smoke to escape efficiently through the top vent. This vent had two adjustable flaps, ears, that controlled draft and protected against precipitation. The entire system worked together: low fire pit, rising warm air, controlled ventilation, and those crucial insulating layers. It was primitive HVAC, designed through observation and perfected through generations of bitter experience. The floor was layered with willow mats, dried grass, and thick buffalo hides, each layer trapping air and lifting sleepers away from the frozen ground where the coldest air naturally settled. People slept with feet toward the fire for even heat distribution. Even the entrance faced east, both to capture morning sun and avoid prevailing westerly winds. Every single detail had a thermal purpose. We have a documentary on the channel, going deeply into how Native Americans built tepees, lived in them, and even traveled with them. Check out top right corner. The longhouse: communal heat and collective survival. In the northeastern forests, where winters brought temperatures to -30 degrees, the Iroquois Confederacy developed a completely different architectural solution. Their longhouses were monumental wooden structures, 20 to 60 meters long and 6 to 8 meters wide, built from bent elm saplings covered with overlapping bark sheets. These weren't just larger shelters, they were thermal ecosystems. Up to 20 families and 100 people could live together in one longhouse, and their collective body heat became a significant heating source. Each person generates about 100 watts of heat continuously. 100 people produced 10 kilohertz of free biological heating around the clock, without burning a single piece of fuel. Multiple hearths ran along the central passageway, strategically spaced to distribute heat throughout the entire length. Smoke escaped through adjustable roof vents, and the distributed heating system eliminated cold spots. But the real engineering brilliance was in the vertical organization. Living quarters lined both sides of the central passage, with ground-level areas for daily activities and elevated sleeping platforms about 1 meter high. This vertical division was critical. Cold, dense air settled at floor level, while warm air from the fires rose to accumulate under the vaulted roof. Sleeping on the upper platforms meant sleeping in the warmest zone of the house. Every meter of elevation added degrees of temperature through natural air stratification. The walls featured multiple layers: outer bark for wind and moisture protection, inner woven mats or skins, and an insulating air gap between them, another thermos principle. Food storage inside the longhouse served dual purposes. Tons of corn, beans, dried meat, and firewood weren't just protected from weather and rodents. They created enormous thermal mass that stabilized interior temperatures against external fluctuations. The entrance vestibules created low-pressure buffer zones that prevented icy wind from rushing directly into living spaces. Every architectural element worked together: structure, social organization, and daily habits formed a coordinated mechanism for collective survival. Clothing: the science of layering. Native Americans perfected layered clothing systems centuries before modern outdoor brands started charging hundreds of dollars for technical gear. Their approach was sophisticated and based on the same principle as their shelters: trap air, manage moisture, and create flexible systems that adapted to changing conditions. The innermost layer consisted of soft, thin suede, deer or antelope hide, tanned until fabric-like. This absorbed moisture and wicketed it away from skin, preventing the dangerous heat loss that comes from wet skin. The middle layers provided the primary insulation: basic shirts, leggings, and dresses made from thicker tanned leather with loose fits that created additional air spaces. Outer garments were spacious robes made from whole buffalo hides with fur turned inward. The long, thick fur created powerful insulation while the smooth leather exterior blocked wind completely. These robes were versatile, daytime protection that transformed into warm blankets at night. Footwear received special attention since feet contacted cold ground and snow constantly. High moccasins featured multiple leather layers with insulating grass or fur insoles. Winter moccasins were deliberately oversized, allowing multiple sock layers and space to stuff additional insulation, often cattail down or rabbit fur. Mittens kept fingers together for mutual warmth, far more effective than gloves. Hats made from beaver or otter fur, often with protective ear flaps, guarded the head. Sometimes hoods went over hats for extreme conditions. Brain-tanned buckskin deserves special mention. The tanning process using animal brains created leather so soft and supple it moved like fabric, yet remained windproof while breathing naturally. It was high-performance material that kept water out while preventing the dangerous sweat accumulation that plagued many European cold-weather garments. The genius was in the system's adaptability. During physical exertion, outer layers came off to prevent overheating and sweating. During rest or severe cold, people wrapped up tighter. Flexibility was built into every aspect. Unconventional insulation materials. Beyond standard hides and furs, Native Americans employed remarkably effective natural insulators that modern science has only recently begun to appreciate. Cattail fluff, that silky material from wetland plants, possessed insulating properties that surpassed many synthetic materials. Incredibly light yet warm, it filled winter shoes and clothing linings perfectly. Dry grass and moss stuffed between clothing layers and dwelling walls created countless air pockets through their hollow stems. This simple, renewable resource literally lay at their feet throughout the grasslands. Even snow itself became an insulator once they understood its properties. Freshly fallen snow contains up to 90% air by volume, nature's own foam insulation. They deliberately piled snow around dwelling bases, creating thick embankments that blocked wind and prevented heat loss through lower walls. In autumn, before hard frosts arrived, they covered the lower portions of walls with turf, loose earth, or stones, half-meter-thick natural insulation that sealed cracks and prevented ground freezing beneath foundations. Winter snowfall automatically enhanced this system, accumulating on these embankments to create even thicker insulating layers. Inhabitants purposefully shoveled additional snow onto walls, building artificial drifts a meter high or more around entire perimeters. For extreme conditions, some groups built semi-underground or fully underground shelters, excavating depressions 1 to 2 meters deep, then covering wooden roof frames with thick layers of earth and snow. Inside these earth-snow bunkers, temperatures remained near zero even when exterior temperatures hit -30, a 30-degree differential created purely through insulation thickness. Entrance tunnels were also covered with snow, creating natural airlocks that trapped cold air before it could reach living spaces. Heat storage and management. At night, heated stones became silent warmth reservoirs. They absorbed heat during burning, then radiated it steadily for 4 to 6 hours afterward. Warmth without smoke or sound. Smooth river stones held heat longest and were carefully selected and reused. This thermal battery system allowed comfortable sleep without maintaining active fires. Hot stones had multiple uses beyond nighttime heating. Wrapped in leather, they warmed beds before sleep. They preheated clothing frozen stiff during night, making morning dressing tolerable. Hunters held small heated stones in mittens during long, motionless waiting periods. Stones even cooked food when placed in water-filled leather or wooden containers, bringing liquids to boiling without fire-safe pottery. The fire management itself was sophisticated. They discovered different woods produced different heat characteristics: pine and cedar for quick warmth, oak and hickory for slow, steady burning. They preserved embers for days or weeks by wrapping slow-burning material in birch bark, creating portable fire starters that traveled with migrating groups. Some families kept embers alive for 2 weeks or more during winter movements. Interior space organization maximized heat retention. Coldest zones along outer walls stored supplies, creating buffer layers between living areas and exterior cold. Sleeping platforms elevated people above cold floor air. Just 20 to 30 centimeters of height meant escaping the coldest air layer. Strategic hearth placement optimized airflow for smoke evacuation while preventing drafts through living areas. Food as fuel and insulation. Survival required enormous caloric intake. Warriors and hunters consumed up to 5,000 calories daily during winter, energy needed to maintain body temperature and activity levels in extreme cold. Their high-fat diets weren't just nutrition, they were internal heating systems. Fats provide the most concentrated energy, releasing substantial heat during metabolism. Pemmican exemplified their food engineering brilliance. This mixture of pounded dried meat, melted fat, and sometimes berries was incredibly nutrient-dense. A few pounds could sustain someone for months. Properly made pemmican lasted up to 50 years, far outlasting most modern preserved foods. It was the original energy bar, but vastly more effective. They processed acorns into nutritious flour by soaking them in running water to remove bitter tannins. A single mature oak could yield 2,000 pounds of acorns. Wild rice harvest provided 300 pounds per family dried and stored in naturally moisture and pest-resistant birch bark containers. Even their ice cream, berries and animal fat mixed with snow, provided high-energy treats during long winters. Hot food and drinks served dual purposes: immediate internal warming and hydration maintenance. Winter dehydration is insidious but equally dangerous as summer dehydration. Hot broths and herbal teas addressed both needs simultaneously. Snow travel innovation. Deep snow that immobilized others became navigable through snowshoe innovation. Each tribe developed designs suited to local conditions. Ojibwe made long, narrow models for speed and distance. 70 miles daily was achievable. Cree developed round, bear-paw snowshoes for deep powder and forest maneuvering. Algonquin created tail designs remarkably similar to modern snowshoes. The physics was precise. Large snowshoes spread weight over 3 square feet or more, reducing ground pressure by up to 85%. A 200-pound person effectively became a 30-pound load on the snow surface. Waterproofing with heated animal fat kept rawhide webbing functional for 3 months of heavy use, longer than many modern waterproof boots. Dog sled teams provided transportation that covered 100 miles daily with properly trained dogs. Sleds made from flexible wood absorbed shocks and bent around obstacles while carrying up to 1,500 pounds of cargo. Deliberately icing the runners reduced friction better than early mechanical alternatives. Tests showed traditional sleds were 30% more energy efficient than early snowmobiles. The collective solution. Perhaps their greatest survival technology wasn't material at all. It was social organization. Fire tenders maintained flames around the clock, a responsibility so crucial that specific families specialized in it across generations. Hunters worked in coordinated teams, using hand signals and tracking skills passed through generations. Some could track animals by studying melted snow patterns where prey had recently walked. Storytellers preserved survival knowledge through entertaining narratives during long winter nights. Medical specialists, medicine keepers, stored and prepared remedies for winter ailments, their knowledge so advanced that European settlers often sought their help. Even children had roles, collecting kindling, learning repair skills, memorizing stories they'd eventually pass forward. Winter games and indoor competitions kept everyone active, warm, and mentally engaged during the darkest months. The understanding was absolute. Individual survival depended on collective survival. When one person failed their role, everyone suffered. This created bonds that modern psychologists study to understand authentic community building. The legacy. Native American winter survival wasn't about a single miracle invention. It was a comprehensive, multi-level system combining engineering brilliance with deep natural understanding and wise social organization. From teepee aerodynamics to clothing thermodynamics, from buffalo chip fuel, every element was refined across centuries and worked in complete harmony. They prove that comfortable living doesn't require complex, energy-intensive technology. Sometimes all that's needed is observation, ingenuity, and respect for resources nature provides. Their legacy isn't merely fascinating history. It's practical wisdom increasingly relevant as we face modern environmental challenges. When power fails and modern heating systems go dark, their fundamental principles remain valid. Manage fuel efficiently, trap and hold heat rather than constantly generating more. Use layered insulation, leverage thermal mass, control airflow. And above all, understand that survival is collective, not individual. The storms haven't changed, only the tools have evolved. But the core rule persists: hold heat, don't chase it. That ancient wisdom, proven through countless brutal winters on the Great Plains and northeastern forests, still saves lives today. Modern houses forget what teepees knew: that warmth isn't about power, it's about design. That survival isn't about strength, but attention. And that the best solutions often lie not in fighting nature, but in understanding and working with it.